Okay, is everyone fed up? That was a delicious lunch. It was good. Very, very good. So this afternoon, our talk is on diabetes specifically. But whether you have diabetes or not, you will learn lots of things, I hope, from this. So let's begin. How to prevent and overcome the new epidemic, diabetes. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't believe it is. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, not to my knowledge it is. Sorry. So you might want to pull out pen and paper. It is recorded. Oh, it is recorded. There you go. Okay. All right. So we will begin. I don't know if this is working for me, though. Nope. Is there a reason? What am I doing wrong? This is not working. Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay, so what is diabetes? It is simply having blood sugar levels so high for so long that they eventually cause significant health complications if it's not corrected. That is what diabetes is, okay? So blood glucose testing in diabetes, diagnosing diabetes, so you usually do a fasting test in respect to glucose levels in the body as follows. So normal is 3.9 to 5.5. You know what? Am I okay if I just stand down here? Okay, good. Good, and then I will see with you as well, as long as I'm not in your guys' way now. Okay, so the results of a fasting test with respect to glucose levels in the body are as follows. So normal would be 3.9 to 5.5. Pre-diabetes is now 5.6 to 7. And then diagnosis of diabetes is more than 7. It used to be up till 7 is normal, and over 7 is high. They have changed that. They have lowered those numbers. So we call it prediabetes, more or less just kind of watch. But I mean, 5.6, 6 is still, I mean, that is all still fine. So the biggest concern to watch for is once you're over 7, right? You want to be under 7 is the key. So here's some facts. The average person has diabetes for 7 years before they are diagnosed. In fact, nowadays they are even saying that they will have had it 10 to 15 years possibly without realizing they have diabetes. Most cases, men versus women. Women tend to go to the doctor more often, have more tests compared to the men. And so men will have it longer, more towards the 10, 15 years. 20% of diabetes cases remain undiagnosed today. Every 3 minutes, another Canadian is diagnosed with diabetes. While the prevalence increases with age, more than 50% of Canadians diagnosed with diabetes, which is 1.2 million, are of working age between 25 and 64. So at least 1.2 million in Canada alone. Isn't that huge, eh? So 3.4 million Canadians are living with diabetes today. By the year 2025, this number is expected to reflect 5 million. Why do you think the change? Diet, obviously, right? But also our lifestyles are really changing. I mean, you think about how many years ago it was all about working on the farm, wasn't it? And getting outdoors and being active and gardening. And today it's about sitting at the TV and at the computer and on our phones and just living these sedentary lifestyles. At least 1 in 10 deaths are attributed to diabetes in Canada. So down below there, you'll see 1 in every 4 Canadians has diabetes or at least pre-diabetic. So here are some risk factors for diabetes, and this comes from the official standard published by the American Diabetic Association. So if you're 45 years age or over is a risk factor, so you're having your glucose tested more often as you age. You're overweight or obese, you do not exercise regularly, you have elevated blood pressure, your cholesterol, triglyceride, blood fat levels are not normal, you have a family history of diabetes. Now, a lot of times these diseases, we tend to instantly say, well, you know what, my mom had cancer, I have a chance of cancer. My dad had diabetes, I'll have diabetes. My grandmother had heart disease, I'll have heart disease. One of the big issues with that, why it becomes hereditary, is because we tend to carry on and follow the same diet and lifestyle of our family members. So it's not necessarily you got the short straw and now here you are, you can't change that. That's not necessarily the situation. Usually the situation is you're following the same formula, right? But you can break that. You can change your lifestyle. You can change your diet. You know, and it might mean, yes, it is still somewhat hereditary in the way that you just have to work a little harder at things. If your grandparents were diabetic or had heart disease, well, then maybe you need to be extra careful of what you eat and be a little bit more active yet, right? Especially if they were farmers back in the day and were already active, your risk is going to be higher if you're sitting around, right? So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you have the short straw and you're doomed. You know, again, culture, where you're born, you know, your ethnic background can make a difference. If you had gestational diabetes, you know, when you were pregnant, you had diabetes, or given birth to a baby weighing more than 9 pounds. That's interesting. Do you know how much my fourth baby weighed? Almost 11 pounds. I'm like, yikes. That's probably my main risk factor in that list. Each year, each baby got a little heavier. Started at 7'7", and then was 8'4", and then 9 whatever, and 10. It's like, yikes. Good thing I stopped at 4, eh? Okay. So here we go. I'm going to explain how this works. And actually, I feel better standing over here if that's okay. I like to look to my right. Okay, so in a healthy person, this is how it begins when you eat. A meal is consumed and digestion begins, and your nutrients are broken down. One of the most important nutrients is glucose. See, a lot of times we think glucose is bad, but we need glucose for a number of things, energy and so forth. It is a simple sugar critical for survival. It is the primary source for energy. So the glucose enters your bloodstream from the digestive tract when you eat and begins to circulate, causing the blood sugar, your glucose, to raise. The glucose needs to enter the cells, to go into the cells, to give your cells energy, but the cells are locked. Okay? So are you getting that? You eat your meal, now the glucose is in the blood, and it begins to build in the blood, and it's trying to get into the cells, but something needs to open the door to the cells so they can get in. The circulating glucose cannot cross through a cell membrane by itself. It actually needs a key to open it up. And this key comes in the form of insulin. You've all heard that, right? So insulin is a hormone that is made from your pancreas. The insulin travels to the cells and connects to the insulin receptors on the outside of the cell membrane, which is then the key, right? It unlocks that door of the cell and allows then the glucose to go into the cell. As the glucose enters the cells, the blood sugar then, what happens? It comes out of the blood into the cells, so then the glucose level comes down in the blood. It naturally decreases and stabilizes, and your cells now have energy to work on your behalf. 4 to 5 hours later, the cells are in need of glucose again, and that's why you get hungry, and you eat another meal, and the process repeats itself again. Pretty simple, right? Okay. So that is in a healthy person. This is normal for all of us. So what about type 1 diabetes? So there's 2 kinds of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes means that the pancreas has been damaged and does not produce any significant amount of insulin. This usually is what we would call childhood diabetes, right? So young children. And they are the ones that usually end up with the type 1 diabetes. They're on insulin for life. You cannot reverse that. Their pancreas is not going to make the insulin, and there's nothing you can do to make that happen, okay? So, an interesting thing that I've learned, one of the common causes today of type 1 diabetes in children is autoimmune disease. And autoimmune diseases are just kicking up out there, hitting everybody, including our young children. And an autoimmune disease will hit them, and actually type 1 diabetes is the autoimmune disease. The body itself begins to attack the pancreas, and that's why the pancreas is damaged. The body sees it as something's wrong, and so it just attacking it, trying to help it, and in reality it kills it off. So in this case, the process starts off the same after consuming a meal. So the same idea, your food is broken down, you get your nutrients, including the glucose. The glucose goes into the blood, right? Leaves the digestive tract, goes into the bloodstream. Your blood sugar levels raise. That's all normal right after your meal. The glucose needs to be able to enter the cells. And what allows them to open the cells? They need a key. And what is that key? The insulin, right? So it's looking for the insulin to open the door. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas is not making insulin, so there's no key, right? It's not going to open that door for them. And so the glucose keeps raising and raising in the blood. And so without insulin, more and more glucose will build up in that bloodstream, causing the blood sugars to raise, and this can become extremely dangerous. So because the pancreas does not produce insulin, then what do we need to do? We have to take insulin. You have to come up with the key still, or they will die. And that's many cases how type 1 is diagnosed. They end up in the hospital, right? Because it's in that dangerous state. So now we have to take insulin injections so that it can open the door and allow that glucose to go into the cells. If insulin is not taken, serious and even deadly complications will occur within days or even hours. Controlling blood sugars decrease the risk for serious chronic complications associated with diabetes. So this can include heart disease, high blood pressure, kidney failure, severe nerve damage, and even blindness. And there's much more than that, but these are your common big guys, right? So it is important to control that blood sugar level. So if someone has type 1 diabetes, what I am sharing with you today, yes, diet and lifestyle will still make a difference in trying to control and keep it nice and level, your blood sugars, okay? It's controlling it instead of allowing that disease to move and accelerate and cause all these other issues in that last paragraph. But you cannot reverse type 1 diabetes, okay? So if someone, that is my concern, because a lot of times people put diabetes all into one basket, and then they'll walk up to someone and say, well, if you would just eat and live right, you could reverse that. Type 1, you cannot reverse that, okay? It's death. They need their insulin, so you need to give them a break on that one, okay? So type 2, what about type 2 diabetic? Okay, so type 1 was always known as childhood diabetes. Type 2 was adult onset diabetes. Originally used to happen in our 70s, our 80s, where your pancreas is not producing the way it used to, right? Just from age, things are wearing out. Same way your heart wears out with age or something else wears out. Okay, sorry. Okay, here I am. I can't lean on the piano or organ. So when it comes to, what was I saying? The pancreas, right, okay, so adult onset. And so the pancreas is just wearing out as well, and it's not producing that insulin. So that was type 2 adult onset diabetes, right? Now, today, type 2 diabetes is even happening in children. So we know that it's very diet and lifestyle related. Okay, it's totally different. So after a meal's consumed, same thing happens, right? Your nutrients are absorbed, the glucose goes into the bloodstream, it builds up, and it tries to get into the cells, needs a key, which is insulin again. So the pancreas is attempting to secrete enough insulin So you got to realize years prior to the diabetes diagnosis, the pancreas has been overworked, being forced to produce enormous amounts of insulin in an attempt to stabilize those blood sugar levels. Unlike type 1 diabetes, where not enough insulin is being produced, in this case, there's actually extra insulin being produced, and the blood sugars are still too high. And so over time, your pancreas can begin to wear out from this, right? So it's just trying to produce all this insulin and keep up with all that glucose. So why was the insulin not working? Why does it have to make so much? Because these cells actually become resistant to the insulin you are making. And so it's not the right key anymore. The receptors are no longer eager to allow that insulin to unlock the cells and allow that glucose to enter. So therefore, it takes increasing amounts of insulin to now try to control the blood sugar levels, causing your pancreas to work harder. And after years of this, your pancreas burns out and no longer able to produce large amounts it was used to. So now we end up with oral medications to try to help it, and sometimes then actual insulin injections. So putting them side by side, this is how it works, right? You've got your type 1 representing only 5 to 10% of the population, whereas type 2 diabetes represents 90% of the population. So in type 1 here, we have diabetes develops when glucose can't enter the body cells to be used as fuel. So this happens because there is no insulin in type 1 to unlock the cells, so you have to give it insulin. Or the second one, the key insulin is unable to unlock the door properly because now it's just, the cells aren't letting it in anymore. It's the wrong key. Or insulin is there, but the lock doesn't work properly. So that's type 2, okay? Is that making sense? Okay, so now we have what is called the prediabetes. So remember, diabetes is 7 and up. Prediabetes is just before that. So it's an early form of diabetes marked by blood glucose levels that are significantly higher than normal, yet not high enough to be diagnosed with diabetes. So the interesting thing is, with prediabetes, even though you're slightly under 7 still, it increases, or it is a strong indicator of progressive heart disease. So when you have high sugars all the time, over time you can expect to have heart disease. It's just what happens. They go hand in hand. And I'll show you why coming up. Gestational diabetes. So this is occurring when women are pregnant and their blood sugar raises during pregnancy. It can threaten the health of both the mother and the baby, depending how high and if it's not controlled, putting the risk of the baby in the future as well for diabetes. And prediabetes increases the risk. If you are pre-diabetic when you get pregnant, of course, that's going to increase your risk of gestational diabetes. So here's the thing. It's not a question, it is. Diabetes is preventable. At least 90% of diabetes cases need never to exist, 90%. Type 2 diabetes accounts for the overwhelming majority of cases caused by diet and lifestyle, as well as environmentally related factors. Weird enough, even stress can increase your sugars and keep your pancreas from making the insulin the way it should. So people under a lot of stress over time can end up a diabetic. Exposure to chemical pollution, social isolations, and so forth. So the best way to say goodbye to diabetes is to never say hello, right? So prevention. With the right education, proper preventative choices, diabetes can be stopped before it starts. So let's say you have type 2 diabetes. Can it be reversible? In many cases, yes. Many of you have heard of the CHIP program over the years, right? Especially this church did CHIP program lots. It stood for Coronary Health Improvement Project. It was a 4-week program helping people to reverse heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and so forth. In those 4 weeks, we saw people who were on insulin come right off insulin and their sugars were normal. So can it be reversed? Definitely. We've seen it, we know it. For those already with diabetes, there is hope. So the same habits that help healthy people avoid diabetes is the exact same healthy habits you follow to reverse it. Now remember, type 1 we can't reverse, right? That's type 2. Type 1 we can't reverse, but type 1, it'll still help to improve their health and be able to be more sensitive to the insulin that they do take in, that they don't need more and more and more insulin as well. So diabetes is a progressive disease. The earlier it's detected and treated, the better the prognosis. While the majority of type 2 diabetics can become non-diabetic, some people, even after following a comprehensive lifestyle program, may still remain diabetic and require medication. So, for example, some type 2 diabetics, they've sustained too much damage to their pancreas. So if you're type 2 and your sugars remain high, your pancreas is being constantly destroyed until eventually it will not make your insulin. And then you have no choice but to do insulin injections, okay? So damage to the pancreatic tissue that they'll always need insulin. This is because type 2 has progressed for so long. And at this point, even though you're not diagnosed as type 1, you are like a type 1. So you have a type 2 diabetes like a type 1 diabetic because you will require insulin the rest of your life or you would die. So we want to try to reverse it. The earlier you reverse it, the better chance you have before you destroy your pancreas is the key. So the common diet suggested for diabetics, if you were to see a doctor or go to someone in the medical field, they would tell you a high protein diet. Have you heard that? Because protein can help balance the sugars and so forth. But there is issues with this high protein diet. And there's bad side effects to a high protein diet. Everything needs to be within balance. As soon as you throw something off balance, something else has to give. So while high protein intakes do not appear to affect glycemic control, it can be damaging in other ways, especially animal sources. So why especially animal sources? Animal protein is very, very concentrated. It has no fiber in it. And so that animal protein being very concentrated adds up quickly. Protein above 20% of your calories is associated with declining kidney function. So having high sugars in general can put a lot of stress on your kidneys, but once you start pouring all this protein through your blood, it's your kidneys that has to deal with that. And that is why so many diabetics end up on kidney dialysis in the end, because they have gone on this high protein diet to cause this, okay? And it's interesting, they've done studies with plant protein, and you don't end up with the same issues because of all the fiber. So when there's fiber included, there's no issues. Animal protein is pure protein, no fiber, and then that is the issue that's hard on the kidneys. Nearly 1/3 of individuals with diabetes will develop kidney problems. Once kidney problems start, then they tend to follow a fairly predictable downhill course. High-fat diets can be linked to insulin receptors or impaired insulin secretion compared to a high-carbohydrate diet. So, high-fat diet, if you think of animal protein, it's also high in saturated fat. So you have concentrated protein and you have saturated fat. So you've got the concentrated protein, which is hard on the kidneys. The saturated fat, remember you need that key to open the door to the cells. Fat will actually block the insulin receptors so that the key doesn't fit. So a lot of times when we think of diabetes, we think sugars all the time. This is really high sugar. But fat can even be more detrimental when it comes to diabetes than sugar itself even. Both will do it. Yes, sugars will put your glucose up, but now the fat won't allow the glucose into the cells. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of diet, very, very important when it comes to diabetes. That is the biggest key, diet and movement. Saturated fats appear to have the most negative effects on insulin action, thus making animal fats especially a concern. Other saturated type fats would be coconut oil. So you could use some coconut oil, but don't get carried away with it. I know people who use a tablespoon of coconut oil every day for their brain, right? I am not convinced of that because it is saturated fat. So when something is saturated, it means concentrated. And that means it's okay, but just eat less of it. So don't be eating it by the tablespoon, right? When it even comes to those type of saturated fats. Another one, I don't know if I mention it in here, but I always like to tell my clients who have sugar issues to avoid peanuts and peanut butter. Peanut oil is saturated fat, but we promote peanuts a lot of times because of the protein for diabetics, right? But I've had people that have a hard time controlling their sugars, and I pull them off peanuts, and their sugars come to normal. So the peanut oil creates havoc on sugar levels. So go for almonds instead. Instead of peanut butter, do almond butter or do cashew butter, or there's multi-seed butter, but avoid the peanuts and the peanut oil and the peanut butter, okay? Good. Yep. Olive oil is a good oil. Yep. Yep. Okay, if you look at this, the 10 leading afflictions that cause death in Canada. First one is cancer, and we know now 1 in 2 people are diagnosed with cancer today. We all have a 50-50 chance, right? So we got to do what we can do to prevent cancer as much as we can. Second one is what? Heart and blood vessel disease. Then it goes on, strokes, pneumonia, so forth. You look down, and we come down to diabetes. So why would we say, with all those statistics I shared with you in the first couple of slides, and if I were to tell you that diabetes is an epidemic, how is it showing it there is the question, right? Is it showing it? Not really. That is because the majority of diabetics die of heart disease, right? So you remember I mentioned even pre-diabetic states, you will guarantee you will have heart issues down the road. So you got to keep your sugars down if you want to protect your heart. But in long term, they end up dying of heart disease. Now, not just because their sugars are high, but what kind of diet should we avoid if we have heart conditions? High fat, saturated fat, again, right? No fiber. So the high animal products, the high fat. So the diet that we tend to medically put people on when they are diabetic is the diet to accelerate heart disease. And it's interesting. When you are diagnosed as a diabetic and you go and see a nice dietitian to work through everything with you, and you go through all these different steps, they'll put you through the whole ordeal, right? You'll go to the hospital, you'll see the dietitian, you'll speak to the doctor, you'll talk to the pharmacist, you'll go through the whole thing, and they'll say to you, I will tell you, you will die from this disease. You will die an early death. They don't hide anything. They tell you this. And if you have diabetes, you've been through this. Don't worry, don't worry though. We are here to hold your hand and walk you through it. Do you want someone to hold your hand and walk you to your grave? No, right? So it's like, how nice of them, but no thank you. So instead, we want to focus on diet and lifestyle and reverse that, right? Have someone else hold your hand, not them. So anyway, so that's what I hope that this talk is about, is to give you hope, not discouragement, okay? So cancer and heart disease are the 2 leading causes of death in Canada, responsible for just over half of all deaths in Canada. So what kind of diet would I promote then? If I'm saying not a high protein, what would I recommend? Well, I don't know, maybe I'm a quack, but from what I've learned and what I've researched and what I've seen works, it is a high fiber carbohydrate diet. Now, a lot of times we think, are you kidding me? She's going to tell me to eat carbs? That's the worst when it comes to diabetes, right? But that is the key, is a high carb, but a high fiber diet. So any diabetic needs to always think fiber. Every time you go to eat something, you need to ask yourself, does this have fiber? Does this have fiber? If it doesn't have fiber, those are the culprits for raising your sugars, okay? So a cake, does cake have fiber? Not really, right? Maybe some coconut on it if we're lucky. And then we know meat, like I mentioned, does not have fiber. Cheese does not have fiber, right? But anything plant-based has fiber. So focusing on fiber, you end up more on a plant-based type diet, which is carbohydrates. But it's the complex carbohydrates that have lots of fiber. And this will improve gastrointestinal function. It'll reduce body weight in the obese. It'll reduce your risk of kidney damage. By increasing your fiber, you reduce your insulin requirements, and you will improve glycemic control. Pretty cool, hey? I know some of you are taking pictures, so I'll wait a second. Okay. So that's the key of fiber, why we want it, right? So it'll reduce how much insulin your pancreas has to make, and it'll improve the glycemic control itself. So carbohydrates are divided into two categories. We have a simple and complex. Here's the difference between them. A lot of times we put all carbs into one basket and say, yep, carbs are bad. So simple carbs are foods that God created. We took them and we decided we can make them taste better than what God did, right? So now we have white flour, white this, white that, right? So our white bread, our white cakes, our white cookies, our white pasta, or white rice, right? All the fiber's been removed. That's why it's white. Did you know even sesame seeds? You should eat brown sesame seeds. But white sesame seeds have the hull removed where all your nutrients and fiber is. So a white sesame seed doesn't have anything. You want to eat brown sesame seeds, right? So always try to get more of the food in the whole form. So these refined carbs have very little or no fiber. Secondly, they will add then directly to your body fat. When people say, well, carbs make me fat, these carbs will, yes, because there's no fiber, so it'll be stored as fat. And it contains a high number of calories, and your nutrients are very low. So you could eat a really big meal, stuff yourself on all these foods, and still feel hungry because you haven't got the nutrients to make your brain and your body realize, you know, I'm full because now I got all my nutrients. And when you don't get the nutrients, you keep being hungry because your body's crying out for nutrients. So that's why we end up with such high calories from it. And these calories are what we would call empty calories. So there's lots of them, but empty in the nutrition aspect, in the vitamins and the minerals. Okay, so what about complex carbohydrates? They are the opposite now, okay? They are high in fiber. They are low in calories. They do not add directly to your body fat. It actually helps your body burn the fat. And they will increase your metabolism, so speed up your metabolism to give you energy, because you need carbs for energy. But then what happens when your metabolism speeds up? You also burn the excess fat and calories, right? So it's a win-win. So these foods, these are your whole foods as grown. So your whole grain bread, your brown rice instead of white rice, your whole grain pasta instead of white pasta, your fruits, your vegetables, and so forth. So they are full calories, much fewer calories, but packed with nutrients. And so this is a reason why when we teach, tomorrow if you come, I hope you come tomorrow. If you're not registered, make sure you speak to Diego about that. Because tomorrow we're going to go through what your plate should look like, how to lay it out, how much you need of certain foods. We will do a menu plan. You will be able to sit and write out your menu plan that works for you with your family. I'll give you lists that you can choose from, and you'll know how to put that together. What else did I want to say about that? And you'll get, because you're getting all the nutrients and eating the right foods, you can eat until you're full and not feel guilty. You know, you don't have to sit there and weigh everything out, how many ounces and so forth. We do as a guideline say a cup of this or a half a cup of that. And in most cases, when you're eating this way, you actually have to focus on how to get all those foods in So when I say how many fruits you can eat, most of the time diabetics think they can't eat fruits. You can eat fruits. You can eat whole fruits and, all the vegetables and so forth. So tomorrow we'll be cooking and showing you, and you'll be tasting the food as well, which is the best part. As long as it tastes good, it's the best part. Okay, so just a general idea, this is what your plate should look like as well, in general, for everybody. So you kind of want 2/3 of your plate to be complex carbs, okay, and about 1/3 maybe of your plate to be the protein, and your fat, consider it to be the garnish. So your nuts, your seeds, your olives, your salad dressing, right? That is the garnish part. And some of those things you'll find overlap. Like nuts, they could be the carb, they could also have some fat, and they can also be your protein. And so tomorrow you'll learn a little bit more on that. Okay, I've shown you this before, anyone who's attended my seminars here in the past, but it's always a good one to kind of re-look at. So we know that sugar, this Sunday is not up there to tempt you all. Stop licking your lips. But have you ever done frozen banana ice cream, by the way? Yeah, you just freeze bananas or strawberries, and if you have a Champion juicer, or if you even just have a Vitamix, or you have a food processor, you can put it in there and make it soft like an ice cream, and you can make your own little topping like a carob sauce. Now I should have taught that one tomorrow, right? I was struggling, what dessert? Now I know. Okay, so if you were to have 0 teaspoons of sugar, so in this case, your immune system is working optimally at this point. So every white blood cell can go out and attack the bacteria. And that means each white blood cell, on average, is able to go out and kill off 14 bacteria, okay? Now, if you were to have 6 teaspoons of sugar, now each of your white blood cells can only attack and kill off 10 bacteria. If you had 12 teaspoons of sugar, now each white blood cell is only 5.5 bacteria. So what do you think's happening to your immune system? It's going down, isn't it? So what happens is the white blood cells are becoming immobilized, paralyzed. They're not able to move. They're not able to go out and fight on your behalf anymore because the sugar has done that to them. So at 24 teaspoons, each white blood cell can now only attack 1 bacteria. What kind of immune system do you have at that point? Exactly. It's pretty low, isn't it? And so we think, well, who eats 24 teaspoons of sugar? But do you know what the average is of teaspoons of sugar per day that the average person consumes? 35 teaspoons. So it's amazing that we're even walking and talking half the time, right? If you think about a can of pop is anywhere from 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar, right? So it's very quick, very quick. Jam is basically 100% sugar. Every teaspoon of jam has about a teaspoon of sugar. Ketchup, ounce for ounce, is the same as ice cream. So you're not going to sit and eat a bowl of ketchup, but ounce for ounce, it's exactly the same as eating ice cream, ketchup. And so children especially love, a lot of ketchup. So how quickly the sugar can add up without us realizing, even reading ingredients, right? Like hash browns, frozen hash browns can have sugar. Canned vegetables, sugar. So read your labels. At one point, Sifto salt had sugar. They've now removed it because the diabetics have clued in. But until then, for years and years, it was sugar. Yeah. Okay, coming to that. Good point, though. All right, so, here I had this slide and I didn't even realize it. But here are just kind of, again, things I've reviewed with you, some of the hidden foods with sugar. Like 1 ounce of chocolate candy has 7 teaspoons of sugar. Isn't that crazy? 1 ounce. See, there's and the top one, a malted milk. Do you know what a malted milk is? It's kind of like like a Tasty Freeze or something they call it now? Or a Frosty. Yes, exactly. Look how much sugar. I always laugh and I tease my mom now because I think I told you this before, but when I was a child, and if I was good and we had doctor's appointments or something, and at the end of it all, we'd be in the mall, my mom would buy me a healthy little treat as a, being a good girl, and I would get a malted milk. I was like, Mother, you almost killed me. What are you talking about? Anyways. And we really didn't, growing up, we didn't have a lot of sugar at home. And, it's like, yeah, we had no idea. Okay, let's get into some of the other sweeteners, such as honey and stuff. But let's begin with artificial sweeteners. Most of us know that they're not good for you. But I don't think most of us know how dangerous they are for us, actually. So they are supposed to be the less fattening alternative, right? They're in like diet sodas, yogurts, even yogurts, healthy things they will put in these type of sugars, so that when you read your ingredient or your nutrition breakdown and you read how many grams of sugar, it'll say 0. And you'll feel really good about that. But you got to read your ingredients, right, as well. But there are 5 dangerous sugar substitutes, especially dangerous, I would say, approved for consumer use. And these are them. Anywhere from saccharin, right? You don't see some of these as much, but aspartame, saccharin, sucralose, very common. Of the 5, sucralose and aspartame are the most pervasive and dangerous substitute found in products on store shelves today. Sucralose, its preparation involves chlorinating sucrose, chemically changing the structure of that sugar molecule by substituting 3 chlorine atoms for 3 hydroxyl groups. So, I know, it's biochemistry. I hate it too. So the thing is this. It comes down to chlorine is being added to that sucrose sugar, and you end up with a carcinogen. Absolutely. No problem. Everyone got it? All right. So yes, chlorine is added. The next one was aspartame, okay? This additive is sold under the name Equal or NutraSweet. There are thousands of everyday products containing aspartame that we don't realize. Look at this. U.S. Air Force pilots were warned not to consume aspartame in any amounts at all. Why? Aspartame has been investigated as possible cause of brain tumors, mental retardation, birth defects, epilepsy, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. So here the diabetics are using this to be able to control their sugars, and it's creating diabetes as well. So I tell people, if you have a choice between a diet soda and a sugar soda, drink the sugar soda. Even though it has 10, 12 teaspoons, still better for you than the aspartame, right? Not that I'm suggesting go drink pop, but yes. Yes, exactly. Chemical. This is true. Yes. He was saying that these are chemicals used, like one of them is used in paint, and one of them is used, what was the other one? As a pesticide.
I don't know if this story is true or not, but in laboratory when we were testing that, and again, I don't know if the story is true, but apparently there was a miscommunication when one of the guy had an accent, like me, and then he said to the other guy to test that, and the guy understood taste.
Oh.
And he tasted and saw that it was sweet, and then they tried,
and then they tested it. Okay, so that's how it came about, you're saying. Interesting. Weird, eh? Yeah, well, and it's true, like even if you think about the different flavorings of ice cream, if you knew what was in those flavorings, it's a whole other ballgame, like formaldehyde and yeah, it's antifreeze, and yeah, it's in strawberry to get your strawberry flavor as an antifreeze, and it's bizarre what they put in our food for sure. Use natural sweeteners like agave nectar, xylitol, stevia, maple syrup, honey. So agave, you'll see it there, is a cactus plant. holds high amounts of protein-building amino acids and alkaloids. It contains inulin. Inulin is known as a prebiotic. It's the fiber that you find in plants and vegetables and fruits. It's a natural plant sweetener with an extremely low impact on blood sugar and cholesterol levels. So agave nectar, the only thing is you have to make sure it's a pure one, because some of the ones that are being sold still have glucose added to them. But you know, that's the truth even for honey. When you're buying honey, it could be half glucose added to it. So you want to make sure you're getting a pure honey. Xylitol. Xylitol is found in birch trees, but it's also found in corn silk. And so if you're using the one that comes from corn silk, it can cause a lot of digestion, intestinal issues, whereas from the birch wood, it's not. So like at our store, we carry xylitol, but we will only carry the one from birch wood. So when you're purchasing xylitol, make sure you see what source it is from. But xylitol has become really a neat kind of sugar. Here's a couple of other things that go along with it. If you ever suffer from dry mouth, some people have to go and get prescription like special gum and special things. Just chew xylitol gum, or take a few granules of xylitol and put it on your tongue, and it stimulates you to make saliva. So it helps to reverse dry mouth. And we know it's recognized by dentists worldwide as a sweetener that with the most promise at preventing cavities, not to mention a variety of other purported health benefits. They say it can help your hearing, it can help your eyes. So I'm not saying dose up on xylitol, but if you're going to chew gum, xylitol gum is excellent. If you don't have a chance to brush your teeth, chew xylitol gum, because that's going to help prevent cavities. It actually works quite well. It's a popular sweetener for those with diabetes because it's absorbed very slowly into the bloodstream and does not contribute to the high levels of blood sugar. So, stevia, many of you have heard of stevia. This is a natural sweetener. It comes from the plant, just a green leaf here. And some people grow the plant and use the raw leaves. They'll take a leaf and throw it in. If they're blending and making a pudding or something, they will throw just the leaves in, and that'll sweeten that pudding. The raw leaves of the stevia plant are approximately 40 times sweeter than sugar. Once you dehydrate it and turn it into a powder where it's much finer and concentrated, it is now 200 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. So that is like a killer on the taste buds. Like, you have to be really careful with it and use very small amounts. So 1 teaspoon of sugar is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of stevia is equivalent to 1 cup of sugar. Okay? But it's pretty cool. It has 0 calories and will not spike your sugars. And in fact, it helps control your sugars. So if somebody's sugars are all wonky, all off, like in the middle of the night, I've had clients that wake up and their sugars are so bad, so high, they know it, that they are not well. They will make a quick little cup of tea or stevia water and drink it, and it'll help control their sugars a bit. One other thing I didn't have in here, I should add a slide in on this one, is what is one of the most common sugars you find in foods today? Fructose, glucose, right? Glucose, fructose. That process to make that is from corn. And during that process, it also forms mercury. So you're actually getting mercury, but it plays havoc on the system. It'll push you into a diabetic. Without anything to do with your diet and stuff, if you're eating glucose, fructose, that is dangerous, very, very dangerous. It is. They're saying that that is the culprit for the majority of obesity today in our children. It's in Special K. We laugh. We go, Special K ain't so special. It's got the glucose, fructose, the worst for you in there. Minute Maid juices is another one. So granola bars that you think are healthy, have it in. So read your ingredients again, but whatever you do, stay away from that combination, the glucose, fructose. Okay, yes. Monk fruit, that is another excellent one. Yes, sorry, good point. That's like stevia. That's another slide I should put in there. Monk fruit is a natural sweetener, and you can find that lots in the store now. Sugar is drops, and yeah, it works good. 0 calories and does not raise your sugars. Yes. Of which disease? Okay. The corn syrups, yes. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Fatty liver, yeah, any of those. For the liver. Very good. Exactly. No, 100%. Yeah, there was, oh, it's gone. I was thinking of something else as well. Maybe it'll come to me. Nope, it's gone. Okay, we'll move on. Oh, got it. Everyone familiar with that beehive syrup? The beehive syrup? Yeah, that is like the worst for you. Or China lily syrup, or not China, white lily. That's China lily soy sauce. But the white lily corn syrup, yeah, that is like the pure, that type of sugar that we're talking about that you don't want. Okay, fats, good fat, bad fat. So we talked about how the fat can block the insulin receptors, right? So like animal fat, saturated fat we mentioned, but did you know there's a good fat as well? And that good fat can actually help clean your arteries and can help clean your blood as long as you're eating within a certain amount of it and not going overboard on it either. So our bad fats would be things like your saturated type fats, or unsaturated fats in excess amount or heated to a point that we change it, that it becomes hydrogenated, or a trans fat, right? So those are our bad fats. Our good fats are known as EFAs, essential fatty acids. These are omega-3 and omega-6. There's other ones out there now too that they're saying, omega-9 and so forth. But omega-3 and 6 are the two big ones that we want to focus on, but especially omega-3. And these are all the benefits of omega-3 and omega-6. Oh, I wasn't sure if there was one more. Okay, so anti-inflammatory, anti-pain, anti-blood clotting. So this actually helps clean your blood, keeps your red blood cells from sticking and clumping together. It'll take away inflammation, take away pain, so arthritic type people, right? Anything with inflammation. Lowers your blood pressure if you have too high a blood pressure. Hormonal balance, we need good fats to balance our hormones. Regulation of the cholesterol, so good fat will help raise your good cholesterol to balance out your cholesterols. It'll decrease the triglyceride, the fat in your blood, it'll decrease that. And it'll stimulate your immune system. So that's all the benefits of omega-3 and omega-6, of your good fats. These are the things that it does, right? Whereas the saturated and those bad fats do the opposite. They will actually cause inflammation. They will cause pain. They will cause your blood to be sticky and clumped together, right? It'll cause high blood pressure. It'll raise your bad cholesterol. Yeah, so it's interesting. We want to focus on these particularly, especially omega-3. And the two big ones for omega-3 are flax seeds and walnuts. Now, there's other things with lots of omega-3 in them. Chia seeds is one of those things, and chia does omega-3 and omega-6. And if you are, again, with the diabetic, or you're trying to watch your, lower your sugars, again, fiber is the key, right? And chia seeds are really nice and high in fiber, which is good. But we get a lot of omega-3 from the variety of foods we eat. It's in our green leafy veggies, it's in our legumes, and so forth. And omega-3 is harder to get, so we got to focus on getting more omega-3 in our diet. And omega-3 will help lower our blood sugar levels as well. So flax seeds, walnuts, in the cold form, we want to aim for approximately 20% or less of fats of our calorie intake. So if you were at a 2,000 calorie diet, you wouldn't want more than 44 grams of fat per day. So the key to this is not to just keep adding another fat on, but to use this good fat to replace the bad fat, right? So using flaxseed oil to make your own salad dressing instead of buying a commercial salad dressing, for example. Here are kind of a list of some foods and how quickly these fats can go up. I mean, if you're thinking of 40 grams of fat for a 2,000 calorie diet, how quickly one trip to McDonald's already exceeds that, right? So, you know, a hot fudge sundae, 11 grams of fat. A Big Mac, 26 grams, right? Chocolate chip cookie, 13 grams. 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. Now, this is something we have to keep in mind. So even though flaxseed is a good omega fat, olive oil we mentioned is a good fat, but in a liquid state, it still is fat, right? When everything comes down to it and you read the ingredients, fat. It's 100% fat. So 1 tablespoon is 14 grams of fat in a tablespoon of olive oil, right? So even though it's the better choice. So if I make popcorn, I could choose to put a tablespoon of melted butter on it, or I could put a tablespoon of olive oil. Now, it's not a good argument here, because this is 1 tablespoon. It says 10 to 11 grams. This says 14 grams, but I'm not going to get the saturated fat. I'm not going to get the cholesterol. Like, the olive oil is still the better choice for me, right? Or flaxseed oil is the good fat to nourish the brain and the hormones and all of that. But just keep in mind, that's where it's important to replace the other, right? Because if I were to just add on a couple of tablespoons of oil, now my fat intake is way above. Does that make sense? Okay. 1 ounce of cheese, that's a 1 centimeter cube, is 7 to 9 grams. Half cup of ice cream, 7 to 16 grams, so it depends on how rich it is, right? Haagen-Dazs ice cream, for example, is up at the 16 grams for sure. It's the nice, rich, yummiest, most packed calories, right? 1 ounce of potato chips, 8 grams of fat. Now, compare this, if you were to now instead eat the whole foods as growing, compare it to this. So here we have, for example, 1 ounce of potato chips is 8.5 grams. Or you could eat a whole baked potato and it's only 1/4 gram. Isn't that something? So what are you going to fill up more on? Of course, a baked potato, you will feel more satisfied, right? And how many baked potatoes can you eat to equal 1 ounce of potato chips? More than what you can handle, right? So this is where I'm saying you can eat until you're full and satisfied without having that detrimental effects. 1 cup of spaghetti even, 1 to 2 grams. 2 slices of bread, 1 to 2 grams. 1 cup of rice, 1 to 2 grams. So the fat is low in these kind of foods. Okay, so as a diabetic, remember I said everything you eat, think fiber. Fiber, fiber, fiber. That's the biggest thing I want to keep punching into your mind is fiber. That's always what you question. So the average person should take in anywhere from 35 to 40 grams of fiber per day, around 35, 40. But a diabetic needs to be 55 to 60 grams of fiber per day. So a diabetic needs to really push that fiber more, okay? So here are some diseases associated with a low fiber diet in general. So any of these can come from low fiber. Diabetes itself, low fiber, right? Hemorrhoids, heart disease, all these play a role, fiber plays a role in. Interesting enough, this one here, diverticulitis, diverticular disease, that comes on from a lack of fiber. And so once you've got that, you get all these inflamed pouches, and now they pull you off the fiber because that starts to get into those little pouches. The seeds in that you need to for sure back off of because you don't want those stuck in. But a nice coarse fiber is the only thing that's going to try to reverse and heal that. You can reverse diverticulitis. Interesting, a lot of the fundraising that goes on for diverticulitis is put out by M&M Meat Shop. And they're the cause of the disease in the first place. Because the meat and the animal products and the cheese and that, you've got no fiber, and it's all that saturated fat, and that is also the type of fat that's causing the inflammation. And so that is kind of that cause of that disease, along with, you know, other refined foods and so forth. So fiber has two kinds of fiber as well, but both of these are good. We actually need both of these in our diet. One is a water-soluble, and one is an insoluble fiber. So insoluble means that it acts primarily as a water-holding agent, so it increases the volume of the stool, reducing the transit time of the intestinal contents, whereas water-soluble fiber is useful in lowering cholesterol levels, as well as lowering the blood sugar response and the insulin requirement after a carbohydrate-rich meal. So we know that water-soluble is the biggest one we need to focus on if we're trying to lower our sugars, right? But insoluble fiber we also need as well. So we need both. So our plant-based foods, those 5 main food groups, these contain water-soluble fiber, right? And again, the animal products have no fiber. The plant products have especially the type of the fiber to lower your sugars. So the more you increase on these, the lower your sugars will come. Well, to a healthy level. It's not going to drop right off, obviously. So just remember, 0 fiber. You know, I remember when I used to eat steak or, roast. I remember eating roast. It looked very fibrous to me. And when I heard there was no fiber in meat, I was like, get out. Like, honestly. Look, I'll show you. It's fibrous. Like, I could not believe that had 0 fiber in it because it looked fibrous to me. But no, there's 0 fiber. Here are sources of soluble and insoluble. So water-soluble and insoluble, right? Fiber. So dried figs. And most of our plant foods have both. They do until we separate them. So for example, oat bran, not the whole oats. If you take oats, does it soak up water? Yes, right? And you take out that bran, oat bran, does it soak up water? What happens when you mix it in water? Soaks it up, right? What about wheat bran? When we separate wheat bran and we put it in water, what happens to it? It just floats, doesn't it? Doesn't really soak up that water. That would be more your insoluble, right? And your oat bran would be more your water soluble. But a lot of all of our plant foods always have both. It's just a matter of some will have higher in one than the other. So your figs have soluble and insoluble, right? Garbanzo beans, all your legumes are very high in fiber. And that's the reason we promote a lot of beans with people who have high sugars. In fact, I used to always suggest eating a small bowl of beans first thing in the morning with your breakfast and eat them almost like you would taking your vitamins. So just have a little bowl by your meal for breakfast, eat your beans first. Now that's not Heinz beans, okay? That's loaded in sugar and stuff. But just plain beans, eat those first and then enjoy your meal. It's just a great way to add in fiber. Take some beans, throw them on your salad. Like wherever you can throw beans in. Yes? Yes, lentils is another great one. Absolutely. And change it up, you know, make it a variety for sure. These are a neat bean. This is called azuki beans. Have you ever heard of them? Yeah, they're a red mung bean. They're just a small little bean. And they're cultivated throughout Asia. They are linked to a lower risk of type 2 diabetes because of their rich fiber content, which helps improve insulin sensitivity, reduce your blood sugar spikes. But the protein that is found in an azuki bean blocks the action of intestinal alpha-glucosidases, which is the enzymes the body uses to break down the complex carbs into smaller, more easily absorbable sugars. Therefore, they block those alpha-glucosidases, which then may reduce the blood sugar spikes. So that is the best kind of bean you could use if you're a diabetic. They're harder to find, but if you're going to throw them on your salad or eat them at the beginning of your breakfast or whatever, get into the azuki beans. Yes?
They're supposed to be really good for helping to produce breast milk.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Neat. I don't know how many of us are into that right now, but that's good to know. All right, exercise and diabetes. Exercise can help regulate blood sugar and increase your body's activity to, or sensitivity to insulin. That threw me off. I was just thinking, what are the men thinking right now? Okay, men, those Adzuki beans are still safe to eat. It won't help you produce breast milk. Oh boy. Kind of like the soybean, how they would get that bad rap, right? So it's like men for a while there was like, I am not touching soy. The Zuki beans now. That's great. Okay. So exercise plays a huge role between diet and exercise are the two big components when it comes to controlling sugars. When you exercise, your body needs extra energy from glucose. So of course, when you're exercising, you're going to burn it faster and use it up. Your muscles are going to pull it up, use this glucose. Therefore, it's going to lower that glucose in the blood so that not as much insulin is needed to put it into the cells, right? Intense exercise, however, can actually raise your blood sugar levels temporarily after you stop, just temporarily. So you're actually better to kind of do more of an intense exercise for a couple minutes and then slow down for a minute. And then do another few minutes, and then slow down for a minute. That's actually the best way for any of us to exercise. You'll burn more calories that way too. It helps burn excess fat, of course, to lower overall body weight. So one of the studies is diabetes or fitness lowers risk of early death in diabetics. So hours of walking per week, if you did none, versus 2 hours, 3 to 4 hours, you cut your risk in half, right? So a half hour a day is what we promote. Have you heard of ketones? Okay, so ketones are chemicals that are made in your liver. You produce them when you don't have enough insulin in your body to turn sugar glucose into the energy. So as the sugars are high and they stay there and it's not going into the cells, you now begin to make ketones. So this is hard on your liver. And your liver now, you end up with the alcoholic liver, you end up with the fatty liver, because you're producing these ketones because your sugars are high. Your body needs another source of energy, so now it uses fat instead. And so that sounds very exciting to some people. Have you heard of the keto diet? Right? And that is what it's based on. People think, well, if I do the keto diet, it'll help me burn fat. But what's happening is your liver is under a lot of stress making these ketones. So ketosis is the emergency response of your body. When there is an emergency, your body will do what it takes to try to find homeostasis, to try to come back to where it needs to be. And that is where ketosis happens. Your liver then uses this fat, turns them into ketones, which is a type of acid, and sends them into your bloodstream. And this is a reason why a lot of diabetics, before they're diagnosed, they will lose weight. They'll lose weight, but they'll also lose muscle. So ketoacidosis, it's different than nutritional ketosis in this case, okay? So ketones are in the blood, but not high enough to cause actual ketoacidosis. So ketoacidosis, so when you're on a keto diet, you're not pushing it as far as, you're not to a point with the high sugars. That's why a keto diet as well, it's high protein, but you're off all sugars as well, right? And so you are not at this point of someone who's a diabetic and has really high sugars. You will end up with what we would call diabetic ketoacidosis. And this occurs because there's not enough insulin to move, again, the glucose into the cells where it can be used for energy. And sometimes other stressors such as infection or illness combined with diabetes can trigger a diabetic ketoacidosis. If ketones are detected in the urine or blood, drink plenty of water so that you can flush those ketones out of the body. Diabetics will need to take insulin to bring your glucose levels down to normal, and then you will continue to check that every 3-4 hours until you are normal. So usually you end up in the hospital when this happens. So you want to keep the body well hydrated. Water is the best option for diabetes. The reason is water does not raise your sugar levels, right? Secondly, it flushes and gets the blood to clean the blood and get rid of that sugar. High blood sugar levels can cause dehydration. So that's why when someone has excessive thirst, you know their sugars are high, and they're running to the washroom lots, their sugars are higher. Drinking enough water can help your body eliminate excess glucose through the urine. And that's what it's doing. That's why you're running to the washroom so much, because your body's trying to get rid of that excess glucose. Interesting enough, the root cause of high blood sugar is due to the liver no longer responding to sugar properly. When this happens, the body can't convert the food that you eat into energy. You feel weak, you begin to notice muscle wasting, you decrease your blood flow and nutrient delivery as up to your eyes, your brain, right down to your toes. This is why so many folks with type 2 diabetes end up losing their legs or going blind, because the circulation is no longer there. And as you lose more and more muscle, you can waste away to nothing. So it is a scary thing for sure. So one of the main medications they put people on is metformin. Everyone's heard of that one, right? So this is how metformin works. It works with the liver. It works by helping to restore the body's response to insulin. It decreases the amount of blood sugar that the liver is producing, so it actually slows the liver down from producing all the sugar it is, and that the intestines and stomach absorb. The unfortunate side of metformin is that it blocks even more sugar from being used as fuel, so therefore your muscle wasting does not stop, right? You can't grow your muscles when you're on metformin. And your metabolism. It blocks even sugar from being used for metabolism, leaving all the sugar and food to be left unprocessed in your gut. And what happens? It sits there. I've talked about this before with the low hydrochloric acid in your stomach. Sits, it ferments, it rots. What happens when it ferments and rots? Becomes an alcohol, goes into your bloodstream, puts up your sugars, right? It's that vicious cycle. And so, yeah, and then we end up, especially in the stomach area, under the neck area, building up that excess fat. So here is an alternative. How many of you have heard of berberine? Yeah. Berberine is a favorite. Today, there's starting to be a lot of hype on it. A lot of people are getting onto berberine for weight loss, just because it helps to control the sugars, and when your sugars are high, you will store the fat more. So that is one reason people are jumping on it. But we know berberine works the same way with the liver, and the positive side of what metformin does, berberine does, without the negative side of metformin. So this berberine is actually our healthy metformin. In fact, in our town, our pharmacist and I, we communicate quite often, and I was questioning him. I always like to see what the medical side of things are, and I questioned him on berberine, and I said, what do you think? Do you like berberine? Is it as good as they're saying? And he said, yeah, 100%, Darlene. And he says, it's equivalent to metformin. So he said, anyone that comes in with a new prescription for metformin, I send them to you first. And we try them on the berberine first. So that's pretty cool. So it's worth a try. Yes?
Just a question on it. I mean, if you go on Amazon, there's like 100.
Exactly.
And, are there some that are better than others? Or?
You know, I don't know all the brands. Of course, some brands have fillers or whatever too. The average is 500 milligrams. I mean, I like this brand because it's Canadian as well, non-GMO, blah, 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 right? So I just kind of try to research which companies I know are pure and then go with a good 500 milligram. And one 500 milligram of berberine should be equivalent to one metformin pill. Yes?
Do you need a doctor's prescription to get
For berberine? No. No, any health foods shelf, I think even the Yeah, pharmacies and stuff might be carrying some of it too now, but any health food has lots of berberine now. Yeah.
It's not just for diabetes, correct?
No, it's actually known even for heart disease. Yeah. At the start of your meal. Same way you would metformin. Exactly the same.
Should you go off metformin first?
So you could do both as long as you're watching your sugars, because then it could be too strong for you if you're doing both, right? So if you're doing metformin, let's say twice, breakfast and supper, you could try to replace one with the berberine and then do metformin at the other meal and just kind of wean your way over to replace it. If your sugars are still high while you're on metformin, you can do both easy enough.
I'm an overthinker,
Okay.
so I'll spend lots of money on the treatment sticks, and now I have a continuous glucose monitor,
Okay.
and so I like to really
Nice.
know what, I asked my doctor to send me to
Yes.
nutritionist, and he said, oh no, you're smarter than average, you'll figure it out.
Good.
And so what I do is I've read a lot,
Yeah.
and I've tried to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's good.
so, yes, like when you talk about exercise,
Yes.
I'll wake up in the morning, and I'm controlling mine mostly by food.
Yes. Good.
I'll wake up in the morning and my resting blood will be 5.3, 5.4.
Perfect.
I'll get up and I'll make breakfast and stuff.
Yep.
Go up to 6.4, 6.5.
Still good.
And it'll go back down to 5.1, 5.2.
Oh, wow.
Just by having some exercise,
Yes. That's right. Sped up your, right, because, and then it'll come down after. That's what we were mentioning. Exactly. Yeah.
I haven't had a chocolate bar for 2 years, so the other day I ate half a chocolate bar.
Yeah.
I hadn't ate since breakfast, and I wanted to see what it would do. My blood was 5.3,
Yeah.
and half of a chocolate bar took it up to 8.3. But it was
Yep.
a spike.
But it was,
But it was
it's a spike. That's right.
up, and it was back down within 30 minutes.
Yeah. Because of your exercise.
Up 3 points.
But that is good. It's okay, because if I ate that chocolate bar, my sugars would go just as high, diabetic or not. It would still spike like that. But as long as within the 2 hours it comes back down, that's the key.
I've only been a diabetic for 2 years, and I need to know.
Yeah.
And so I've reached the point where I've decided to go off metformin
Yeah.
for 6 months to see what happens.
And I was going to say, from what everything you're telling me sounds like you've reversed it.
So I want to know, do I have to keep taking it? And so I was going to experiment with
Without it.
just not tell the doctor, just go off
Yeah.
of it to watch my
And just what? You're monitoring it, and that's the main thing. That's all good. As long as you're monitoring it, you're good. Metformin's not something you have to wean off real carefully. You can go on, off, on, off. So just know that you're okay with that. But if you do feel you need some, that is where the berberine will come in.
if it goes up, you can't take the metformin.
It doesn't work like that. That is right. No.
Metformin has
It has the time period. Exactly. And
4 weeks before it did any good in my beginning.
exactly. That is true. But I'm just saying some drugs you can't stop instant and go back on. Like, that's not the worry part of it, right?
Going off metformin
Yeah.
for 3 4 weeks doesn't mean anything because you still would have residual.
Exactly. This is true.
6 months will be a test.
That'll be a good test. But, you know, your recovery time is perfect. So how you spiked is normal. Like any of us would spike from sugar that way. And then because you recovered right away within that time frame was really good. That's showing that you've probably reversed it. That would be my guess. I mean, it seems to... I once had a man who said to me, does this mean I can eat chocolate bars whenever I want and it won't affect my blood? I said, no. He says, well, then what's the point? You didn't cure me, did you? And I said, I mean, that is what it is. Without being diagnosed, any of us eat sugar, it's going to spike until it gets into the cells, right? So the more sugar you eat concentrated, it's got to spike because it's got to go somewhere. And then as long as that recovery time means your cells open and we're able to take it in and get rid of it.
I'm not interested in having more chocolate bars.
No, no. Exactly. Absolutely. But the point is, yeah, you're never, I mean, people who think they're diabetic, you know, some of them, like this man, he figured, well, you know what, what's the point? He'll keep doing insulin so that he could eat as many chocolate bars as he wants because the insulin is going to control it for him. And it made no sense to reverse it through diet if it meant he couldn't eat as many chocolate bars as he wanted without it ever spiking your blood sugar. But it's going to spike it. Anybody is going to spike it.
My doctor put me on metformin. He said this is not a license to eat however you want.
Exactly.
This is to help you.
Yes.
You have to eat healthy if you're going to do that.
Sounds like you have a good doctor, because the majority of them actually tell diabetics, we want to work with you. You eat normal, how you like to eat, and we will adjust the medication to that. Keep living. We don't want you to stop. We will adjust it to you. So you have a good doctor. Okay. So metformin versus berberine. Several studies have shown that berberine can lower blood glucose levels in people with type 2. So not type 1 again, right? It's different. They need insulin, so none of this is going to do it for them. Studies have found berberine was as effective as metformin in reducing fasting blood glucose levels and the A1C blood test in patients with type 2 diabetes. Berberine increases the uptake of glucose by muscle fibers, improving insulin sensitivity by activating AMP, which is also activated protein kinase. So otherwise, it works just like berberine. So that's the exciting thing about it. How many of you have heard of psyllium husks? Okay. It has well been known as a fiber. It's found in Metamucil, right? Metamucil. It's a laxative. But you can buy psyllium husks and the powder. So what is it as a diabetic you always have to think about when you eat? Fiber. So they are now promoting psyllium husks and the powder as a great way for people trying to lower their blood sugars, because it is a water-soluble fiber, which is especially the type you need as a diabetic. So through its gelling action, when you take this and you mix it in water and you drink it, as soon as you mix it in, it goes thick and slimy. Okay, so you have to mix it, drink it fast. And the key to it, the side effect would be, is if you're not drinking enough water. So you have to make sure you're drinking enough water because you don't want it backing you up either, okay? But you would do this, it slows the sugar absorption then from the digestive tract. Without a gel-forming fiber, sugars are free to rapidly be absorbed in the bloodstream, raising your blood sugar levels. When psyllium mixes with water in the body, it forms a gel that's not digested, absorbed, or broken down. And when the gelled psyllium and sugar are present in the digestive tract together, then the gelled psyllium traps some of those sugars and slows it down from the absorption. Pretty cool, hey? So this is any water-soluble type fiber, though, again. So your oats, right? When you eat oatmeal in the morning, it has that type of fiber and is working that same way. But this is a great way to increase that fiber intake, is by taking a teaspoon of the psyllium husk fiber or powder and mixing in water, drink it first, and then eat your meal. So these trapped sugars are released over time, absorbed more slowly in the bloodstream, helping the body maintain healthy blood sugar levels. How much should you use? You could do anywhere from 1 teaspoon 1 meal a day to 1 teaspoon 3 meals a day. But always start with a small amount first. Get your body used to that fiber. So maybe you want to start with a ½ a teaspoon in some water just at the start of a meal the first day. And then the next day you might want to do 2 meals. And you could increase that up to as much as a teaspoon every meal eventually if you wanted to. But start small and just feel it out, okay? Another excellent thing for weight loss, because you've got that fiber, it's going to make you feel more full as well. Other supplements to just kind of add to your list and put in the back of your mind. Vitamin D, we know if you are lacking in vitamin D, it increases your risk of diabetes as well. Omega-3 we talked about. Magnesium is another one. Magnesium is also good for the heart. You know, most of these things we're talking about for diabetes is also good for the heart. So magnesium, diabetics are at a higher risk of deficiency of magnesium for the reason that your kidneys release more magnesium in their urine when blood sugars are high. So when your sugars go up, you lose a lot of magnesium. right? And so you need that for your muscles. You need it for your adrenal glands for stress, for depression, to help you sleep at night, for muscle cramps. And so taking extra magnesium, and usually we tell people take it in the evening because it relaxes you and helps you to sleep. But actually for diabetics, you might want to take one in the morning and one in the evening so that you're taking in about 500 milligrams a day. And that helps, again, to control your sugar levels. How many of you have heard of alpha lipoic acid? Okay, that is just a very strong antioxidant. I promote that especially for diabetics who have neuropathy. So if you have issues with your feet where they're numbing and you don't got that circulation, the alpha lipoic acid will help to improve that circulation in your feet, but it can also help lower your glucose levels as well, your sugar levels. And they say if you take it along with vitamin C, it will actually enhance its effects. On average, we say for a diabetic about 300 milligrams a day. They usually come in 200 and 400, and so you could take a 400 once a day. On the bottle, it even says you could take 400 twice a day if you have serious neuropathy. Why not? But yeah, with the vitamin C, it's very good. Next one, so the vitamin C in itself, so by putting vitamin C with the alpha lipoic acid will enhance it, but vitamin C in itself, studies show if supplementing with 1,000 milligrams for 3 months will actually lower your hemoglobin A1C by 18%. Isn't that something? So 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day will help lower your A1C levels. So thus, lemon water, first thing in the morning. You always know me as the lemon water queen, I think, here. I'm always punching that one. But first thing in the morning, right? Because the water is going to help flush that glucose out. It's going to help with the hydrochloric acid to get the digestion going. And you're also getting some vitamin C. But take 1,000 vitamin C milligrams, actually. This is a new one for me that I have learned because I haven't always promoted a lot of vitamin C supplement. I've always been afraid of too much vitamin C can cause kidney stones and some of this type of thing. But it is water soluble, so it's flushing you. And, you know, you don't have to do 1,000 all at once. Do 500 twice a day or something like that so that it doesn't just flush. You're able to absorb it a bit more if you take a lower dose more often of vitamin C because it's, you know, yeah. I'm wondering how it compares. I'm waiting to see studies of how the liposomal fat-soluble vitamin C, how it compares because that stays in the body. And I'd be curious to know if that does even a bigger impact. It would be interesting to know, but I still need to find that out. Chromium is, oh yes.
Is there lemon juice with vitamin C?
Oh,
Stuff in the regular
good point. Yeah, the regular real lemon has ascorbic acid and citric acid and stuff like that added to it. So ideally would be to fresh squeeze some lemon juice into your water. Or at a health food store, you can buy pure lemon juice. Yeah. Chromium is a mineral, the key nutrient that improves insulin sensitivity. So when I'm doing clients, if I find that their chromium levels are quite low, I will tell them to see their doctor to have their glucose tested because chances are they might be diabetic. So chromium can definitely help balance sugars, and it also helps shrink fat cells. So some of the diet type supplements have put a lot of chromium in the past for that reason. Too much chromium, if you don't need it, you will feel nauseous. And that's what happened with a lot of these diet type supplements. They would end up having a lot of chromium in them and make people sick. And so you do want to buy, if you're using a chromium supplement, buy a chelated or a chelated, however you want to say it, chelated chromium, and that way your body throws it off if you don't need it. But chromium is important for people who have diabetes specifically because it'll improve the insulin sensitivity. It'll increase the number of insulin receptors. Interesting, hey? It'll actually increase those insulin receptors on the muscle and liver cells. Chromium's even more effective when paired with biotin. Have you heard of biotin? Now that's a new one to me too. I wasn't quite convinced of that one yet, but I thought that was pretty cool. Biotin helps increase insulin sensitivity and control blood sugars as well. So there are some companies that are coming out that you can buy the two together for that reason. Biotin is quite known for increasing the strength of your hair, hair growth, nails, skin, that sort of thing. But yeah, you put chromium and biotin together and it's a powerhouse. Vitamin E is another option. It can help with preventing heart issues associated with diabetes. So if you especially have both issues. Cinnamon, a lot of times we say, well, cinnamon can cause inflammation, may not be great. This is kind of controversial, you decide. But out of all the cinnamons, there is something called Ceylon cinnamon, and Ceylon cinnamon is more your medicinal cinnamon, and it can help balance sugars and improve circulation as well. And that's it. Any questions? Yes? That's a very good question. I'm not sure. Yes, Dr. Google. Yes. 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 So when it comes to Synthroid, though, the biggest issue is calcium. So calcium is the one that you don't want to take with your Synthroid. That's the biggest. The other vitamins and nutrients should not be an issue, actually. And calcium is the exception to the rule. Calcium we take at night because it absorbs while you sleep. So if you're doing Synthroid in the morning, your calcium at night, if you need to take calcium, you're safe. Everything else, you're fine within the hour. Vitamin C, not a problem. Yep. After an hour, though, like take your Synthroid and wait the full hour, and then everything else should be safe. Yeah, it's just the calcium's the issue. The calcium keeps the Synthroid from being absorbed and used. So it cancels out the Synthroid, more or less. So you don't want to take them hand in hand. So a lot of people don't wait the hour. They will take the Synthroid and then they'll sit and drink milk and whatever, which has calcium. So that's not good. So do your Synthroid, wait the hour. Then as soon as you get up, take your Synthroid, wait the hour, and then, yeah, you're good. Yes. And if you want to do lemon water, that's still safe. I usually say do your Synthroid, wait a half hour, then do your lemon water. You wait your half hour, and then you can eat. Did I say? Oh, yes.
You know, you named all those terrible things that are in the sugar substance. Why is that allowed?
Ah.
Does nobody care that these
No.
poisons are being put in the sugar substitutes that people use all the time?
No. Sadly, no. You know, it's interesting. I always like to use the Oreo cookie as an example. They have literally invested millions of dollars into the Oreo cookie, testing it to make sure you can't stop at one. And there's over 30 chemicals in a Oreo cookie to make... I'm sorry, it's over. It's a sad, sad relationship. It's gone. It's out. Yeah, 30 chemicals to make sure you don't stop at just one. And they don't care. And if you think about these foods that are out there, how long they last, like even you have to be careful, even whole wheat things. You know, I had whole wheat tortilla wraps. I put them up on my fridge. I shouldn't have, but I did. And I totally forgot about them. I am not kidding you. 6 months later, I said to my husband, oh my goodness, I forgot I put tortilla wraps up there. I pulled them down. They were soft. They were perfect. We had them for dinner. No, I'm kidding. No, but they were good. There was nothing wrong with them. I'm like, oh, they're even whole wheat. You would think they're healthy, but there's chemical in it. You know, like that is very scary. Sad. They care more about how long food will last than how long you will last. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. No, it shouldn't. Okay, apple cider vinegar, though, if you're going to take it, apple cider vinegar is hydrochloric acid. Lemon water promotes hydrochloric acid, right? It stimulates your stomach to make it. Apple cider vinegar is it. So you need that half hour with the lemon water to make the hydrochloric acid. The apple cider vinegar, because it's hydrochloric acid, you take it right at the start of your meal. So you don't want to take it and then wait. You want to take it and then eat. The only downside really with apple cider vinegar you have to be careful of is it can pull potassium long-term out of your system. So I've had some people who do a lot of apple cider vinegar and their blood pressure went really high and they couldn't figure out why, and then we figured it out. It's a potassium-sodium imbalance. And I put them on some mint tea and they were good to go. And yeah, and then pull them off the apple cider vinegar. So that's kind of the downside of that one. But otherwise, yeah, take it at the start of your meal and you're okay. Any other question?
The oil saturated derivatives, the coconut oil, for what I actually understood was the difference is the type of saturation, right?
Okay, so when it comes to the type of saturated oil, yes, depends on the circumstance though. So for example, if for heart disease and that type of thing, the bomb is 2 ingredients, saturated fat and cholesterol. You put those 2 together and it's bad news. So if someone's on a plant-based diet, they can eat coconut oil, they can eat, olives, like any of these peanuts that have saturated fat, your cholesterol will not go up because you're not taking in cholesterol type foods, right? But if you're eating a steak and then you're eating coconut oil, the 2 combined make the bomb and your cholesterol goes up. Now when it comes to sugars though, and saturated fat blocking the insulin receptors, that's different. That's all saturated fat if you have too much of it, right? They're just, because then that'll block the insulin receptors. But that's if you have too much. So if you're eating something like coconut oil, it's not that it's bad. The point is not to overdose on it. It's concentrated more, right? Yeah. But then for some reason, peanut oil tends to have that reaction of putting sugars up.
The peanuts as well, I think the major problem is the fungus, right?
The fungus, which when cancer, anyone who's diagnosed with cancer, I tell them absolutely no peanuts, no corn, no mushrooms, anything fungal, because cancer is fungus-based. So you have to pull off all those, yeah. But the average person can eat some peanuts as long as you're not overdosing on anything. It's all about balance, yeah, because there's still a good, protein source and good food, but, each person's different. Yes?
Just a question about oils, because I know there's some oils that are actually okay.
Yes.
Not in excess, but aren't there some though that you are even okay, but you shouldn't heat them too much?
Correct. So something like flaxseed oil is good for you. It's an essential fat, but the second you heat it, it becomes a carcinogen. So you don't want to heat flaxseed oil. And other oils, depending, they'll go to different temperatures before they smoke and break down. So olive oil is like one of your good stable oils more too, right? Even when it breaks down, it doesn't turn into a carcinogen, which is good. Even when it smokes, they say olive oil won't turn into a carcinogen. Sesame oil goes nice and high. Grapeseed oil goes nice and high. Avocado, yeah. Any other questions? We're good? Okay, so tomorrow, cooking class, more information. If you haven't registered and you still want to, depends how you smile at Diego and beg him, he might let you in. And then, so I think I kind of told you what tomorrow will be. Yeah, and then hopefully we will see you then. Oh, yes.
Flaxseed, I heard that if you grind it and eat it,
Yes.
that's the best way. Otherwise,
So flaxseed again, back to flaxseed oil or flaxseed. So flaxseed has that hard shell to protect it. Can stay in your cupboard for a long time and won't go rancid. Second, you grind it down, the oils are kind of now released or active. So it's sensitive to heat, light, and oxygen. So that's why as soon as you grind it, you eat it, it's the freshest form, it has the highest nutrients. As it warms or sits out, but still, if you use it in baking or something, because the fiber is still there, it's safe in that mix more. It's the oil you don't want to ever heat, ever. Yeah. Yes?
Yvonne is here. She's from Red Willow.
Oh,
I took her cooking classes and stuff.
oh, okay.
And I give a lot of credit to
Nice. Excellent. Very good. Yes, I thought so. Excellent. Yes.
What about black rice?
Black rice.
Yeah, like I switched my rice to black rice about 15 years ago.
Okay.
But is there the fiber in it?
Yes, there's fiber in it.
All the antioxidants are there.
Yeah.
Is there enough fiber?
I don't know how the fiber compares to brown rice. I'll have to check. But I know that it's definitely fibrous. I don't know if it's as high. Red rice is another one. Red rice is equivalent to brown rice when it comes to fiber. So I don't know about the black rice, how it fits in. Wild rice is very high fiber. So, yeah, I'd have to check, I guess. Okay. Oh, one more. Just squeaked in.
It's in relation to one of the substances you were, the supplements
Okay.
you were talking about, but I don't know if it correlates to diabetes or that, but there was an acid one on the slide before.
Alpha lipoic acid?
Yeah. And
Yes.
for tingling in the feet and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Would that help also with, like carpal tunnel as well?
No. It's hard to say. It's a very strong antioxidant is what it is. And yeah, it promotes the blood flow to the feet and that. So it might. I can't say for sure, yes or no.
The same line as quercetin then?
Different.
It is different.
Yes. Yeah. Good for the liver, yes. Alpha lipoic acid, very good for healing the liver. Yeah, as well. Yeah. And in itself will bring down sugars as well. Can help to bring down sugars. Okay. I'll let Diego mention that. Maybe we don't want to mention that one.
Well,
We'll have
actually,
too many
was,
people.
yeah, actually, I have actually was taking care of that, so that's why I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's her department. I think it's for tomorrow. So,
Okay.
all right. All right. So thank you very much. If anybody still interested, actually, our numbers now is 40 registered. We have room for 60, but we are already counting the helpers as well. So we might be able to fit one another. Like, let me know if you're interested. It's 1:30 tomorrow for the cooking class. If you had registered yet, so just talk to me after. All right. Okay. So let's just bow our heads for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you very much once again for the opportunity that you gave to us to be here and listen to Darlene with all those informations. I ask you and your Holy Spirit to help us to put in what we learn here in our lives. Bless the week, bless tomorrow, our cooking class. That I would ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.